Please, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome to handle the panel session, Mr. Nelson Cole.
Without wasting too much time today, we have a very important and interesting topic to talk about today, which is, for our conversation today, it's how an exceptional music teacher shapes lives beyond the score. All right, so we'll move on straight to this very interesting topic. And the first question, of course, is what we have here. In your own view, I'll start with Reverend Engineer Mrs. Okunore Makindipe. In your view, ma, how would you say that an exceptional music teacher, or let's keep it open, an exceptional teacher would shape lives?
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Mrs. Soyannwo. I think the first thing that I'm going to say, it's interesting, beyond, impacting lives beyond the score. When Mrs. Soyannwo has a meeting with you or she's teaching, she expects you to take notes. But beyond taking notes, you must put the date on the notes you're taking. So I've made notes of what I want to say today, and I'll put today's date. So that's one. I mean, that has nothing to do with music, but that has stuck with me. You know, she wants you to ask you, what date? When did it happen? How do you track things? So you must always put a date. And so, beyond music, in my own case, I met her in 1983 or thereabouts, music class, Queen's College. In 1982, our music teacher then, Mrs. Apata, and Mrs. Oresonya and Mr. Eke took about 37 girls from Queen's College on a trip to Austria. You just heard her shout Austria. She talks about Austria all the time. I'll tell you about that one later. And that was very brave, you can imagine, 37 young girls. And that trip had a great impact on us. It was the 250th birthday of Haydn. And so we went all over different parts of Austria. Before then, music, I used to take piano lessons, but you know, music, I don't know about now, in my time, music was only done by nerds. And at Queen's College, maybe you'll find one girl taking music in WAEC, you know, school certificate class. The next year, maybe none. Well, that trip to Austria did a lot. And in my Form 4, I think about 8 of us decided to do music. And I was one of them. I said, I'm going to, you know, conquer this music. And things were going well until Mrs. Akpata, Mrs. Soyannwo was teaching us. This was exceptional because she was a vice principal. And before then, we'd never had a vice principal teaching a subject. So it tells you about her passion. She had her administrative work, but she still decided to teach. So one fine day, Mrs. Akpata comes to class and says, you're taking the ABRSM grade 5 theory of music exam. And I thought, this woman doesn't know what she's talking about. I mean, things were going on well until you had to start composing. And composing is not a joke. And that's how I disappeared from the class. And I did not take the music. Fast forward to 2016 it was. I mean, all of this time, she influenced me, music influenced me because my appreciation of music, you know, was great. I passed that on to my children, and so they all went to Muson. And then one fine day, I said, I'm going to go back to do that grade 5 theory of music exam, and she was there at Muson. And I went to her and Mrs. Akpata to complete the job they didn't do. I had my teacher, but when it came to the part of composing, I mean, I went back, and they both taught me. And of all the sections in the exam, composing was where I had my highest score. And I had a distinction. And I'll tell you, my daughter was taking the exam as well. Oh, can you imagine? Anyway, she did well too. She got 90, but I got 92, so I beat her. So I was very happy for that. So, little things about Mrs. Soyannwo do matter and have influenced one. And that's why I'm here today. So let me stop there and let the eye doctor say some other things.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I think I'd also now pass this on to Dr. Ile to also give us his thoughts around having an exceptional teacher shape the lives of people.
Thank you very much. I'm really honored to be here today to talk about my teacher, EJDS, Edna Soyannwo. She was always called EJDS by her students in King's College. And I wrote a few things down after I got here. And when Timothy was talking, I quickly put a date to it so that... the first thing I'll say is that she has not taken us to Austria yet. So a few more trips to go. Now, how will I describe her? I'll describe her as a mother and a teacher. And I emphasize the mother first, a mother and a teacher. In those days, you'd have mothers who were teachers. Now you'd have teachers. But she was a mother and a teacher. And next year, September, will be 50 years since I've known her. Wow. Now, why do I say she's incredible? She has so many children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren in the music world. She has 5 biological children. Shoni, Shosonya, FK, was for Folake. She always calls her FK. Ladune and the Great Bolu. And why I say the Great Bolu was the last born. And you know how last born sometimes are. And I used to spend in Form 5, because I was taking music for school set because of her. I used to go to her house every Sunday, and I'll have lunch with the family. And lunch was very rich compared to what we get in boarding house. However, I made good with what we are getting in boarding house. Because whilst I'm having lunch at the Soyannwos, somebody is having my lunch in boarding house and giving me 2 pieces of meat extra on Monday. And Monday we used to eat eba. So that used to beef up things. So I used to enjoy my visits to her home. And you can't visit her home just as a student. You have to interact. And you do a lot of interaction. And sometimes you don't realize that music was part of what you discussed and why you were there. So because of my going to her house, I became one of the very popular students in boarding house, and I enjoy that. One thing about her is she transmits her passion of music to her students. She transmits her passion. Even those who are not taking music for school set, those who are in the choir, they all remember the songs she taught us. And they sing, and whenever they meet her, it's like, this is my mother. I remember in those days, she would walk up to my father and tell him that I was too playful in school. And that, oh, he's a distinction student, but he's too playful. And my father would be wondering, what do they mean by you're too playful? You're too playful. And you know how boys are. You just give one story or the other. But yeah, you continue playing. But that was a very good time in King's College. But she was tough. And when I say she was tough, she was like a mother. Many of you realize how strict your mothers were. And I've looked around. My children are not here, so I can make a confession. In Form 1 in King's College, I was caned. That was the only time. And who took me up for caning? EJDS. I'm sure she doesn't remember, because she had given me an assignment during what we call our speech day. And for whatever reason, I didn't come up for the speech day. And I was put in line, so to speak. But you know how you tell your children that you are a model student. So I don't let them hear about this. So she was tough. She was like a mother. And I've seen that she's made amazing contribution to lives of professional musicians, as you can see here. But she has made music lovers of over 1,000 people who are not professional musicians. And that, I think, it's a feat to be celebrated. It's not everybody who comes into contact who has to be a professional musician, but she has impacted in a lot of lives. And lastly, I'll say that everybody in King's College then wanted to be called her favorite student. As far as I can remember, I was her best student and favorite student. Others might remember differently, but this is what I remember, and I stand on it. So I'd like to give a big hand of congratulations to Mrs. EJD Soyannwo for being a mother to us and a teacher. We celebrated her 90th birthday on 7th of January this year. We all enjoyed it. And I pray God be with you. May you continue to be in good health. And that every year, 7th of January, for the next 10 years at least, we continue celebrating your birthdays. A lot of us like rice and pounded yam, amala. Whatever it is, we pray that you are here with us for us to continue celebrating you. Thank you for all you've done, and I'm speaking on behalf of all King's College old students. Thank you, ma.
Excellent. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, sir. At some point, yes. At some point. At some point. All right. So, interestingly, one of the questions I was going to ask was, did you ever experience Momsi show with the king? And you already answered that, so that's, quite.
But just once, so just once.
Just once. All right. So I think we also want to hear introductory comments too from Mrs. Dupe Ajayi. She's joining us online, so I think it's a good time to please unmute your device. Can we have her join us, please?
Yes, I'm on already.
All right. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
All right. So, Of course, the question is, using Momsi Show, of course, as a case study here, how would we say she has impacted our lives?
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Good afternoon, Auntie. I think, without fear of favor, I am one person that can speak about Mrs. Soyannwo with all fondness, with all gratitude for the way she has taught my life and the lives of my children. And let me start by saying, Mrs. Soyannwo's husband, the late Uncle Shofolue, was actually my dad's cousin. So I'm from Odogolu. And so I grew up, my parents, we had a piano, and it was always my mom and my dad's dream that we played the piano. And of course, where else would they take me but to Ma Soyannwo, as we call her now, but Auntie Edna. I can't really remember when I went to her, but I know we went to her when I was still in primary school. And at that stage, I think I'm one of her oldest students, Auntie. I think I can boast about that. I went to her when they lived in Apapa. And they moved from Apapa, I can't remember where, somewhere, but we moved with her. And then I remember I went to boarding house in Queen's College, and therefore I could no longer take lessons with her. And in Queen's College, I started taking lessons with Mrs. Akpata. I went on to take music. There were only two of us, two girls in Queen's College who took music at O levels as a subject, and I was one of the two, myself and Yetunde Akisoy. So who was Mrs. Soyannwo? How has she shaped my life? I will say this, Mrs. Soyannwo has impacted on my life greatly. Today, I do not play the piano. Somehow, I'm not a pianist anymore, but I am such a lover of music, and I've come to appreciate all genres of music. But I believe this love of music, I know, started from when I was young. Mrs. Soyannwo was a nurturer. She was a teacher. She was a disciplinarian. And her life was an embodiment of contentment, an embodiment of peace, of joy. And these are values which we wish more people would appreciate and have. So I started off, playing the piano. I became one of the two pianists, school pianists for Queen's College. I played for the choir. I played right up to my O levels. I then went abroad. I went to boarding school abroad, and I continued playing. And I actually did go on and play the organ I was taught in my boarding school. And as I said, I came back, I still played and all that, but somehow or the other, today I'm no longer a pianist, but my ears are so attuned to music. And I must say, I must boast, and I'm so happy. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Sorry,
we
can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, today I'm so happy that we're having this for her in Emmanuel Chapel because my husband is the chaplain. So it's just so befitting that, this is being hosted by in Emmanuel Chapel. I know several people that have been through her, including Ayo Ajayi, several of her students. My children went through her. My late brother, Tunde Ogoyemi, went through her. I mean, just so many of us. Mrs. Soyannwo has a family and of musical students, and she's just been incredible. Today, as I said, although I don't play, I have a fine appreciation of music. Anywhere in the world I go to, I love to visit. I go to I watch the Boston Symphony Orchestra, any orchestra that I know is world class, I'll go and see them. And I would say that I've moved away a bit from classical music now. I love what you call jazz. I love smooth jazz. And I now go on jazz cruises. I know a lot of the jazz musicians, but every single smooth jazz musician I've come across, I've spoken to, they have all started off as classical musicians. So what has happened in my own case is that my spectrum of music has been broadened. I've left classical music a bit, and I've now moved on to smooth jazz. But at the same time, when the choir sings in Emmanuel Chapel, if the organist I'm able to contribute. I'm able to, rub minds with the director of music, and I just have a very fine appreciation of music, and I have a lot to thank her for. I thank her because when you spend a lot of time with a person when you're young, somehow or the other, there are things that rub off on you, and you may not appreciate it at that time. But I think some of the best qualities that have rubbed off on me from my aunt, Mrs. Soyannwo, is discipline. To be a good pianist or musician, you have to be disciplined. You have to practice that discipline. And as I said, just other things, just her lifestyle. This is funny. Her hairstyle has remained the same for over 50 years. And I just want to say to Auntie that, Auntie, we love you. We appreciate you. We thank you for what you have done, because music, indeed, you have been a pillar of support, of strength for all musicians, classical musicians in the country. And I just wish you many more years. I wish all my aburus need to Folake. I want to thank them for the way they've looked after you so beautifully. And it's indeed an honor that, I can come on. I'm so sorry I'm not in the country, and that's why I'm joining you by Zoom. And just to say we love you, and thank you for what you have done. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Dupe Ajayi. Thank you very much. And I think Reverend and Engineer Mrs. Okunore Makinde wants to just add one or two things.
Yes, I'd like to say something about the impact she's had on a number of people just by being a nice person. One fine day in the year 2006, Mrs. Soyannwo and Mrs. Akpata walked into my office at the MTN Foundation, where I served as executive secretary. They came with Mr. Gwega, Banjo, and Mrs. Oye Williams, and they wanted to start a diploma program at Muson. So there I was, faced with my two former teachers. You know, when you're in school, sometimes you have teachers who are tough, you don't want to see them again. But this wasn't the case. To cut the long story short, MTN Foundation sponsored the program, and they're still sponsoring. So many people have been impacted just because if she was a horrible woman, maybe I would have just frowned or, rejected the proposal. But I'm thankful for that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma. We hear of birthdays, and it's your day. How often do we hear of birth year? Because it appears your birthday is not just the 7th of January. This is April, and we are still celebrating Momsi Show. She deserves a round of applause. And it's not going to end in April. And I'm sure some other people, some other groups want to still celebrate you. And this can only come from our own dear Momsi Show. Momsi Show is a true representative of what a teacher should be. If you think through it, a lot of times you hear of schools, they talk about themselves. You hear just like Doctor had proudly talked about KC, Reverend Mrs. who talked about QC. And there are other schools people will talk about. But then, what would really make these schools? The teachers. And that's something Momsi Show has done for these great schools. She deserves a round of applause again. All right, so incidentally, our panelists too haven't been taught by Momsi Show today in their own rights are teachers too. Because even our Dr. Oyile is a teacher by virtue of his profession. And by virtue of Mommy's calling, she's also a teacher. So, using, of course, Momsi Show still as our case study here today, how would you say that, how can we motivate, students to be active learners? The good thing is you were very active learners. You were active learners, and that's why we can talk about Momsi Show today. It's important that we also begin to think of the generation that is coming. The event we are having today is one that is all over, and it's on the internet, and it's in another 10, 15, 20 years, somebody will still click on this event and still watch. So I would just like to ask, from our own point of view, how do we think that we can also motivate students, those who are coming? I would like to start with Dr. Oyile on that one.
Thank you very much. It's a tough question, and because it's tough, I'll just have a quick answer and let Timitayo do the work, giving the long answer. I think the first thing is at home. Your parents at home need to invest time in you. Nowadays, because of probably the situation of things, you have a lot of parents not being able to invest a lot of time with their children, either rightly or not, because sometimes they have to go out to make a living, which will make things more comfortable and pay the day-to-day things that are at home. But I feel the first way to impact on the children is at home. And then, unfortunately nowadays, our teachers are not being seen as our mothers. I remember in those days, you cannot go and report a teacher at home to your parents. If you do, you get double punishment. But now, children do that. And some parents, not all parents, some parents take the wrong attitude and go and confront either the teacher, the principal, or the school. And I feel that's very wrong. Even if you feel that your child was shortchanged or not treated fairly, go quietly. Don't take the child and start lambasting the school or lambasting the children. I know some people who have done that, and at the end of the day, it hasn't done well for their children. So I think initially the first thing is that what happens at home is key, and you need to give the respect to your teachers. Unfortunately, 21st century is quite demanding on parents. So I don't want to blame the parents. But the way I see it is, if I'm fear of repeating myself, is that we need to start at home, and then we need to identify either mentors or role models. I remember in the past, they wanted me to mentor someone, and I found it a bit expensive. So I said, look, let me be a role model, not a mentor, because it was cheaper. But then after some time, you now realize that you really need to talk to some people. You cannot just say you want to be a role model and stay away. You need to be a mentor. Sometimes you might deliberately mentor one or two people. Sometimes you might find out you are just in a position to mentor one of them. And I'll give you an example. I have a nephew-in-law. He came out of school and said, within a year, I'll buy a car. Within 2 years, I'll build a house. And I was there telling him that life is not like that. And he came back to me 2.5 or 3 years later. Uncle, this is my car. I don't have a house, but I bought a plot of land. And that's because where he did his youth service, there were a lot of sharp practices. And that became the norm. Luckily, he was somebody who had a listening ear. And his job after that, he found people who are now being reprimanded for what they felt was easy money. And he remembers what he has been told, that, look, work hard for your money. At this age, you need to work hard. Later on in life, you might get more comfortable. At this age, struggle. So, like I said, being at home, respecting your teachers, mentoring, and being a role model are very important. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ile. When you started, you said it was going to be very short, and it was short. All right, so let me come to Reverend Mrs. Temitayo Okunore Makindekwe as well. I don't know, what are your thoughts around that same question too?
20 minutes, please.
Mine, you said yours will be short, so mine would have to be short.
Oh.
Your question is how to motivate students so that they can be active learners. And I'll give two answers. The first one is that a teacher must put himself or herself in the shoes of the student and not just lay down the law. So before somebody teaches, for instance, a topic, you've researched that topic, you probably taught it over and over again. But the person learning from you is learning for the first time. And so a teacher needs to remember how it was when he or she was learning that particular topic for the first time, and try as best as you can that way. If you put yourself in the student's shoes, then you would make more effort in teaching. That's one. Another one is to give examples. And I've actually taught maths and physics and chemistry and English language as well. And I'll give you an example. Maths, you teach sine and cosine rule, and that is so abstract. And you begin to, what am I going to use this for? You know. Now, I'm an engineer, and a simple, common, everyday example of how you use the sine and cosine rule is in the construction of a staircase. If, I always say that I've only seen 2 staircases in this entire world that are comfortable. One of them is in the house of Dr. E.O. Akishete in Victoria Island. And the other one is a staircase of Methodist Girls High School, their PTA building, which I'm proud to be part of. And, if sine and cosine rule, if it's too steep, you climb some staircases and it's just one step, but you're so tired. That's because it was too steep. They didn't have enough space, or they didn't apply the rule very well. So when engineers are constructing, you apply the cosine or sine rule properly, and then you can build very comfortable staircases for your clients. So when teaching that, give an example that the student can relate to, so that it's not abstract. Those are my answers.
Thank you very much. Excellent. Thank you so much. We would also want to get, before I move to Mrs. Modupe Ajayi, I'd just like to ask, do we have Pastor Akisoya joining us yet online? Please just check so that we can also get his contributions. Not yet. All right. So, Mrs. Dupe Ajayi, are you still on with us? Would you like to please say something? Are you still on? Okay. Okay. All right. We'll move on. We'll just take maybe. I know that we are all itching to ask our own questions too. But I'll just take one round of questions again, and in response to this, please, we would also make it more or less our closing remarks, particularly from the panelists. So. So we're going to have questions and answers from the audience. So that will be an opportunity to then, so that we can close this session, and then, just to follow. I'm also just very conscious of time, so that we can work with time. Is that okay? Thank you very much. So, the last question here. We hear that saying a lot. A teacher's reward is in heaven. This time around, I'll start with Reverend and Engineer Mrs. Temitayo Okunore-Makindipe. A teacher's reward. Do you really think a teacher's reward is in heaven?
Well, I think they will get some of their reward in heaven. But as you can see here, Mrs. Soyannwo is getting her reward, some of it here. And one of her rewards is that she has so many nicknames. You call her Mom Sisho, Na Ed, you call her EJDS. Most they call her G Mama. She has others as well that she even gave herself to. Masho, and all of that. So that's one of the rewards, because people love her. So teachers, like I said earlier, you have some teachers who are very tough, might be for your good, but the way they communicate may come on so hard. But for those who are strict, thankfully I never got a cane from her like Dr. Ileye did. In fact, I need to say something about that. When she was at Queen's College, we had a very tough principal. I appreciate her today, but at that time I didn't. Mrs. Kafaru. Now, Mrs. Soyannwo was the soft one, so it was a very, very nice balance. So I think she's receiving the reward of her hardness to Dr. Ileye and softness to somebody like me here. And I mean, to think that even my children appreciate her. I know at least one of my children is online now watching, and I mean, how old is my child compared to her? So for, a young person to want to be part of this tells you, the kind of person that we're here to celebrate. So a teacher's reward, yes, will be in heaven for sure, but I think that they can start enjoying it here or suffering from it here.
Thank you very much. Dr. Oile, your thoughts around that, sir?
A teacher's reward is first on earth, then in heaven. Speaking as a medical doctor, when your teachers come to you to look after their health, you feel very proud that the people who brought you up now feel you worthy enough for you to come and look after their health. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say this. I will say it and then I'll retract it if I'm not allowed. I look after Mrs. Soyannwo's eyes, and I think I've carried out surgery on her eyes. And I'm proud to say that when my teachers come, I feel so happy that I can at least give something back. Now, that is breaking medical confidentiality. So I take back what I've said. So please, nobody should quote me. I'm somebody who I remember most of my teachers, even from my nursery school, my kindergarten, the primary schools, the secondary schools, the universities and everything. And I feel most people, if not all, have a good recollection of going through school. Sometimes you might be somebody who is difficult in school, but when you come out of school, you start life and you start having your own children, you now appreciate what your teachers did for you. So I'll say it should start on earth, answer your question, and then continue in heaven. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. I think Mrs. Dupe Ajayi would also share her thoughts around that. A teacher's reward is in heaven. Mrs. Dupe Ajayi, please.
Yes, I'm here. So, thank you. A teacher's reward is both here and in heaven. Here, it's I'm sure it's her joy when she sees us, all her students, and especially, students that have done well in whatever sphere of life. So that is a reward. This day and age, it's nice to have mentors. And she definitely has been a fantastic mentor to a lot of us. So, anywhere you turn to, I'm sure Mrs. Soyannwo has students, and be it from KC, be it from QC, wherever. And obviously, in heaven, I know she's going to hear all the beautiful melodies, all the beautiful choristers, her ex-students. She may even hear me playing some jazz somewhere along the line, but definitely she has impacted on us all, and I'm sure she's proud of us, and we pray that she will continue to enjoy, she'll continue to enjoy God's grace and God's blessings. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. One, common thing I think our panelists have talked about today is playing the role of mentors, being mentors to these younger ones, role models, and of course, putting ourselves in the shoes of the students to really understand what they are going through. Like I said, I know we have quite a number of persons who want to ask questions, so at this time, our panelists are still very much here to respond to the questions. Or to contribute, yes, to make contributions, correct, yes. Okay, so you have 1 minute. Short, in the true definition of short.
Right. My name is Chizurum Mbazigwe. Also Anthony, that's what G Mama calls me. Congratulations, Mama, for this amazing opportunity. You are here expressing God on earth, and we're learning from you to see, how best we should express God on earth. God has given you 90 years. Man, I left everything. I said I must come today because I want to live 90 years as well. So, the first question you asked, I want to say something, how to inspire students, to learn for life. And I want to use G Mama's influence in teaching to give a thought to that question. My experience with G Mama in teaching, beyond her prowess in knowing her subject, teaching it well, she has an art which is coming into the classroom. She doesn't just come to teach. She comes to rapport. She comes to make friends, and which I see is one of the things we lack in this part of the world. A lot of teachers tend to be so strict too serious, that students are scared to learn, and they see learning like a difficult thing to do. But she makes learning so easy. You know, by the time she smiles with you, she comes in with that smile, you know, and then she plays with you. Even when you're not doing well, she finds a way to encourage you. I think we need that, you know, in the learning field, which makes learning, because one of the things we also experience is that people learn for the moment just to pass the exam, and then they drop everything and go into the world. But learning should be a lifelong thing. But learning should be a lifelong thing that, you know, you love learning after doing the basic things or doing your exam. So I think that's one of the things. What's the second question? I want to contribute to that.
Teacher's reward?
Yes, teacher's reward. Now, I come to a different dimension, merging what you have answered already, which is correct. The reward is actually in heaven. But you know, thy kingdom come on earth. Let your will be done on earth as it is done in heaven. G Mama is living on earth right now. So her heaven is here right now. And she is doing it because she yielded to the rules that conform to living in heaven on earth. She's loving, she's kind, she's honest. When she comes to impact, it's not because of the money. I remember when they retired, they were called back at Muson. They came back not because of the money. They've retired. I mean, there is enough money. Even if she doesn't have personal money, there is more money from all her students everywhere to supply in her bank. But she came back. Why? For the love of it. And because she has done that, she must. It's a law. What you sow, you reap. Newton's third law of motion. Action and reaction are equal and opposite. She has given an action, she must get the reaction. God bless you for what you've done, and you will live to receive more.
Excellent. Thank you.
It was Mbali. It was supposed to be 1 minute. You turned it into church. One more person. Contribution, question, anything. Okay, sir.
Good evening. My name is Olushola Makindipe. I happen to be a friend of G Mama by association. But I often wonder by asking her this question. You know the tribute I wrote about you, so I want to ask you a question. Why do you like rolling your eyes when talking to your students or when addressing them? You have a way you roll your eyes. And to some of your students, I'm not doing amebo. That frightens them. But to those of us who are not your students, you know, we have nothing to gain, nothing to lose. We just say, Mama ti roll oju. But why do you roll your eyeballs? You will answer that question. The next one is, I was just imagining when you are dead. I'm a priest, so life and death to us is the same. So don't be frightened. And I said, what sort of songs will she be singing when she's in the graveyard? So I'm beginning to wonder. I'll be writing that down so that when you are dead and we are saying this, you say, oh, she'll be singing either Owambe, which I know she won't, but she will be singing hymn number 1 from the Methodist hymn book, Oh, for 1,000 songs to sing, or hymn number 313, To God be the glory. I'm sure you have others. So you still answer my question. Why do you roll eyeballs?
You want to reply now?
So, because we have, well, this session we're supposed to close out at 4:30, but I think we can spare another 3-4 minutes and then have Momsi Show respond to it, because I'm also curious to know what the response will be.
Okay, so okay, she wants to respond. Okay, before Mommy responds, for our online audience, if you have anything to say, you can just drop it in the chat box. We'll pick it out from there and read it for our audience. I think that's fair, so we give them a chance to also say something. I know some of us wants to say stuff. You're just holding it, you're waiting. this is the opportunity to speak now, or okay. So we want Jimama to respond. Oh dear. For the rolling eye.
What I usually stand up when I'm teaching.
Oh, okay.
So I stand up. When I'm tired, I'll sit down. Mm-hmm. Yes. This rolling eyes, I heard about them only recently, after the tributes for the 90th celebration. And I heard them from Tayo. So Tayo, could you describe?
I'm in trouble.
Yes, no. How I do it, or if I do it whilst I'm talking, stop me and tell me you have rolled your eyes. How do I do it?
I don't know. Mama, I don't know. Just
because this is very, very interesting. I didn't know I rolled my eyes, but about a week ago, I was in Ghana. I came only 4 days ago. And my great-grandson at 4 said, "Oh, Nana Ed, you're going to roll your eyes again." I was shocked. And I said, "How do I do it?" And he did something like this. I didn't think I did that. But it must have been a habit that I don't know. But I don't know how to roll my eyes.
Thank you very much. So, before the MC comes up, I would just like to say a very big thank you. You would agree with me that this session has been very interesting. We've learned a lot already, and I think it's important to say thank you, first of all, to Reverend Engineer Mrs. Temitayo Okunore Makindipe. Thank you so much. Please, a round of applause for her. Thank you so much, ma. And of course, to the eye doctor, my eye doctor, like I said as well. But that was about 3-4 years ago, sir. Of course, Mom Sisho's eye doctor. We want to say a very big thank you to Dr. Abiola Oyele, the medical director, the Eye Doctors Clinic. Thank you so much for coming and for participating in this session. We're indeed very grateful. And of course, it's important that I say a very big thank you to Mrs. Dupe Ajayi. She's joined us online for being a panelist and, of course, our host here today as well. We say a very big thank you. God bless you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Please, another round of applause for Mr. Nelson Cole. Thank you so much, Nelson.